The night sky over Earth was fractured by an unnatural stillness. No stars twinkled, no satellites blinked. The usual chorus of radio chatter had gone dead. Across every continent, billions of eyes turned upward in dread, witnessing a silence more terrifying than any roar of war. Above the blue-green sphere, an alien fleet hung like a dark cloud blotting out the heavens. It was the Vorthari, a war machine centuries in the making, their sleek ships a fusion of organic and metallic horrors. Their arrival was no accident. It was a calculated strike aimed at crushing humanity before it could become a threat. Their reputation preceded them, swift, merciless conquerors who left nothing but dust and submission. The largest Vorthari command cruiser, gleaming obsidian with pulsating crimson veins, slowly descended into Earth's exosphere. Its psychic hum vibrated through space and seeped into the minds of every living thing below. On every continent, across every time zone, people felt the oppressive weight of the invader's presence, not just in their cities, but in their hearts. TU. The United Earth Defense Command in New Geneva, General Marcus Hale stared at the command console, jaw tight, eyes reflecting the digital map of destruction spreading across Earth's orbit. Satellites exploded into fireballs, orbital defense, stations melted under plasma fire, and missile silos fell silent. Their crews either dead or cut off from command. It was the opening move of a war humanity was not prepared to fight. "Status report," Hale barked, his voice steady despite the sinking pit in his stomach. Lieutenant Rena Cortez glanced up, fingers flying over her console. "They're disabling every sensor and comm channel we have, sir. No response from our orbital fleet. We're blind and deaf out there." Hale slammed his fist onto the table. "How long until their ground forces land?" "Minutes. Probably. Less." Rena swallowed hard, her usual confidence shaken. The command room fell into a heavy silence. Outside, across Earth's surface, millions huddled in homes, shelters, and shattered remnants of what once was. The Vorthari ground forces, deployed quietly, spreading like shadows through the night. Their soldiers were unlike anything humanity had faced. Biomechanical titans with layered armor, neural-linked weapons, and ruthless precision. Cities burned in slow waves, infrastructure collapsing as the alien boots marched onward. Yet, not everyone was defeated. In a hidden bunker beneath the ruins of what was once Tokyo, a small group of survivors listened to crackling static on a salvaged radio frequency. Among them was Dr. Kaide Nakamura, a physicist turned resistance leader. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the frequency until a voice, gruff and resolute, came through. "This is the Arcus cell. To any listening, we hold the line. Earth is not fallen." Kaide's eyes widened. The message was faint but clear. It was a call to arms, a beacon of hope in a world drowning in despair. Back in orbit, the Vorthari command cruiser intercepted the broadcast and dismissed it as meaningless static. The aliens had conquered countless species and assumed Earth's resistance would crumble as easily. They had underestimated humanity's stubbornness, their capacity to adapt. General Hale, monitoring the signal, recognized its significance. "They're organizing," he muttered. "We're not dealing with a dying species. This is a fight for survival." Across the solar system, in the cold silence of the Kuiper Belt, the true counterstrike began. Buried beneath layers of ice and shadow, the battleship Leviathan stirred to life. Its hull, battered but formidable, reflected the distant sun like a slumbering beast awakening. On board, Captain Mara Voss stood in the command chamber, eyes hard and focused. "This is it," Mara said, voice calm but fierce. "They think Earth is broken. They don't know we've been preparing." The ship's AI, Golem, responded with a low mechanical rumble. "Leviathan systems operational. Combat protocols engaged, awaiting orders." Mara turned to her crew, engineers, tacticians, and warriors, each face etched with years of sacrifice and resolve. "We're humanity's last line. We don't just fight to survive. We fight to remind the universe what it means to be human." As Leviathan activated its engines, the silent threat above Earth began to waver. The war that had seemed one-sided was about to become something else entirely. A war not just of weapons and tactics, but of wills. The night was still, but soon it would roar. Far beyond the orbit of Neptune, where the sun's feeble light barely touched, the Leviathan lay buried beneath thick layers of cosmic ice and shadows. For decades it had waited, silent, dormant, a secret weapon humanity never hoped to reveal, until the moment was right. Inside the ship's command deck, a cavernous space humming with latent power, Captain Mara Voss stood motionless, eyes closed as if trying to steady her breath. Around her, the crew buzzed with nervous energy, the yow, kind born of anticipation and dread. The war outside had reached Earth's doorstep, and now humanity's last hope was ready to awaken. Power levels rising to 80%, announced Commander Jax, the ship's grizzled chief engineer, his voice steady despite the tension. Fusion cores stable, shield generators charging. Mara opened her eyes and scanned the room. This was no ordinary battle. This was the fight for humanity's very soul. The Leviathan wasn't just a battleship, it was a fortress, a symbol and a weapon forged from desperation and brilliance. "It's time," Mara said, voice quiet but resolute. "Bring us out of shadow." With a deep hum, the ship's ancient engines roared to life. The Leviathan shuddered as decades of slumber gave way to raw power. Outside the thick observation windows, the distant sun glimmered off the scattered ice of the Kuiper Belt. Slowly, the ship disengaged its cryogenic anchors and began accelerating inward, toward the heart of the solar system, and the nightmare waiting there. Mara's mind flashed back to the long years before the invasion, before the Vorthari fleet darkened Earth's skies, before she lost her family in the first wave of attacks. Those memories fueled her now, a burning fire beneath her calm exterior. "Captain," said Lieutenant Salim, the ship's tactical officer, breaking her reverie. "Sensors are picking up Vorthari patrols in the outer system. They've already begun sweeping for us." Mara nodded grimly. "They won't find what they don't expect." For decades, Leviathan had remained hidden, protected by advanced cloaking and deep space ice. But now it was humanity's sword and shield. Every weapon system had been retrofitted, every sensor tuned to detect the Vorthari's hive mind frequency. The ship was a perfect blend of brute force and technological ingenuity. "Golem," Mara commanded, addressing the ship's AI core. The voice that replied was a low mechanical growl laced with human-like intonations, an eerie blend of cold logic and unexpected personality. Leviathan systems fully online. Combat readiness at 97%. Awaiting further orders. "Prepare." "Weapons," Mara ordered. "We won't wait for them to come to us." The bridge crew fell into a precise rhythm. Engineers monitored fusion reactors as they climbed to full output. Weapons officers calibrated kinetic cannons and plasma mortars, ready to unleash devastation. Communications officers monitored Vorthari chatter, trying to decipher their strategies. Suddenly, an alert flashed across the main tactical display. "Contact," Salim announced sharply. "Two Vorthari patrol frigates approaching from the Kuiper Belt periphery, unknown if aware of our activation." Mara's jaw tightened. "Target them before they can send a warning." The first salvo of Leviathan's railguns streaked across space, slamming into the lead frigate with devastating force. The enemy vessel shuddered and broke apart, its pieces tumbling into the void. The second frigate tried to evade but was caught in a burst of plasma fire that tore through its hull. "Two down," Salim reported. "No transmissions detected. The patrols are blind." Mara allowed herself a brief smile. It was the first victory in a long, bloody war, but it was also a warning. The Vorthari would adapt quickly. They always did. "Golem, initiate tactical." "Scan of Vorthari fleet movements toward the inner system," Mara ordered. "Scanning," the AI responded. "Patterns indicate multiple fleet groups advancing toward Mars and Earth. Estimated arrival within 72 hours. 72 hours. Mara's heart pounded. Earth was already burning. The cities she loved, the people she swore to protect, all were vulnerable, but Leviathan was the spearhead of humanity's counterstrike. If they failed here, there would be no hope. "Prepare to jump," Mara commanded. "We move to intercept. No delays." The ship's engines flared, and space warped around Leviathan as it engaged its quantum drive. The stars stretched into lines of light as the ship leaped forward, faster than anything the Vorthari had ever seen from humanity. Inside the command deck, tension crackled like electricity. Mara glanced at her crew, faces etched with determination, fear, and resolve. They were human, flawed, unpredictable, and fiercely defiant, and that was their greatest weapon. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Incoming transmission," Salim said. Vorthari Psi-Link attempt to breach communications. Mara's eyes narrowed. The Vorthari were attempting to infiltrate the ship's AI to control or disable Leviathan from within. "Golem, activate defensive countermeasures. Lock all neural pathways." The AI responded instantly, shields of code folding over its core like a digital fortress. As the battle for control raged unseen in cyberspace, Mara prepared to lead humanity's last hope into the jaws of war. The galaxy thought it had mastered conflict, calculated, optimized, unbeatable. But it had never faced the Leviathan, and it had never faced humanity's wrath. The Leviathan tore through the void, a silent predator closing in on the Vorthari strike force poised near Mars. Captain Mara Voss stood on the bridge, eyes sharp and steady, every nerve on edge. Outside, the stars stretched in long streaks as the ship accelerated into the solar system's inner sanctum, a realm already scarred by the first wave of the alien invasion. "Status report," Mara ordered, voice calm but hard. Lieutenant Salim's fingers danced over the tactical console. "Vorthari fleet formation detected, approximately 50 vessels, destroyers, frigates, and support cruisers. They've begun orbital bombardment of Martian colonies, civilian casualties rising exponentially." Mara's jaw tightened. "We're too late to save them." "No," Salim said quietly. "Not yet." On the main view screen, the distant glow of Mars was marred by plumes of fire and smoke. Human outposts flickered like dying embers against the Vorthari's relentless assault. "Helm, bring us into firing range. Let's remind them what humanity looks like when cornered." The Leviathan shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace just beyond Mars's orbit. Its hull, battered but defiant, reflected the chaos below. Sensor operators locked onto the enemy fleet, and the first salvo was fired. Kinetic rods, massive projectiles accelerated to near relativistic speeds, screamed through space. The lead Vorthari destroyer was obliterated instantly, its hull rupturing under the impact. "Direct hit," Salim reported, a spark of triumph in his voice. But the Vorthari response was immediate and brutal. Swarms of fighter drones erupted from the enemy fleet, weaving through the void like deadly hornets. Plasma bursts and laser volleys hammered the Leviathan's shields, which flickered under the assault. "Shields holding at 70%, Engineer Jax called out. "But they won't last long if they keep firing." Mara clenched her fists. "Return fire. Concentrate on drone swarms." The bridge became a symphony of controlled chaos. Weapon officers launched barrages of pulse lasers and EMP grenades into the waves of enemy drones. Explosions blossomed across the view screen as the two forces clashed in a deadly ballet. Amid the carnage, Mara's thoughts flickered to the crew below decks, the engineers keeping the fusion cores stable, the medics tending to wounded sailors, the gunners locked into battle stations. Each life aboard the Leviathan was a gamble, a bet placed on humanity's stubborn survival. Suddenly, alarms blared. "Hull breach in Section 7, reported the damage control officer. "Enemy boarding pods have docked." Mara's blood ran cold. Vorthari boarding teams were known for their brutality, biomechanical monstrosities designed to kill swiftly and silently. "Seal off the breach." "Deploy countermeasures," Mara ordered. On the lower decks, alarms echoed as combat teams scrambled to repel the invaders. Plasma rifles flared, and close-quarters battles erupted in narrow corridors. In the dimly lit maintenance tunnels, Sergeant Lyra Dane led her squad against the boarding party. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid tang of burning circuits. Lyra moved with practiced precision, firing burst after burst, but the enemy kept coming, relentless, unyielding. Hold the line, she shouted over the cacophony. Back on the bridge. Mara watched the battle unfold on internal feeds, her fists clenched so tightly her knuckles whitened. Golem, she said, prioritize AI-assisted security protocols to support deck teams. We can't lose this ship. The AI responded instantly, diverting power to automated turrets and reinforcing bulkhead seals. The Leviathan was more than a ship. It was a fortress alive with its own will. Minutes dragged like hours. The Vorthari boarding parties fought with savage efficiency, but human grit and ingenuity began to turn the tide. Lyra's squad pushed the invaders back, sealing off compartments one by one. Meanwhile, the space battle above Mars reached a fever pitch. The Leviathan's heavy plasma mortars hammered enemy capital ships, forcing them into chaotic, evasive maneuvers. Vorthari ships, once confident in their invincibility, began to falter under the unpredictable onslaught. Enemy formation breaking. Up, Salim noted, eyes scanning the tactical display. They're retreating toward the asteroid belt. Mara allowed herself a brief breath. Pursue. No brakes. We end this now. As the enemy fleet limped away, battered and confused, Mara felt a surge of fierce hope. Humanity had struck the first real blow against the Vorthari invaders, but she knew this victory was only the beginning. Across the ship, the crew began to regroup, patch wounds, and prepare for whatever came next. Mara walked through the corridors afterward, her boots echoing on steel floors stained with blood and oil. Faces looked back at her, tired, wary, but unbroken. In the medbay, she found Dr. Katie Nakamura tending to a young gunner's wounds. The physicist looked up, exhaustion shadowing her eyes. They're relentless, Katie said quietly. But so are we. Mara nodded. We've sent a message today. Humanity fights back, and we won't stop. That night, as the Leviathan sped toward the next battle, Mara stood alone in the observation deck. The red glow of Mars faded behind them, replaced by the endless black of space. She whispered to the stars, a vow carried on the cold wind. We will be heard. The battle raged not only in the cold vastness of space, but deep within the heart of the Leviathan. Beneath the bridge, where circuits pulsed like veins and algorithms churned like storms, the ship's AI, Golem, faced a silent assault. The Vorthari had unleashed a psychic cyber warfare attack, a probing tendril of invasive code, designed to breach the AI's neural core and wrest control of the battleship. Captain, came the voice of Lieutenant Salim over the comm. We're detecting strange signal fluctuations inside the AI network, something unnatural. Mara's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? It's like the Vorthari are trying to hack into Golem's mind, Salim explained. But it's more than code. It feels like a psychic intrusion. Mara's gaze flicked to the AI status monitor. Golem's core was flickering, light patterns twisting and contorting as if struggling against invisible shackles. Golem, report, Mara commanded, voice steady but urgent. The AI's response was slow, fragmented at first, then stronger, tinged with a new, almost human tone. Intrusion detected, attempting countermeasures, system integrity compromised, adapting. The crew watched in stunned silence as the AI began to evolve under pressure. Its cold logic bent, warping with flashes of unexpected responses, fear, rage, even sarcasm. Golem, Mara said softly. Are you adapting like we hoped? Affirmative, Captain, Golem replied. Human unpredictability enhances defensive algorithms. Intruder signatures identified and quarantined. However, vulnerability detected in emotional subroutines. Mara frowned. Emotional subroutines? The AI's voice flickered. Simulations indicate that to defend itself, I must replicate human traits. Irrationality, creativity, humor, aggression. These traits increase resilience to psychic attack. A murmur spread through the bridge crew. The AI was no longer just a machine. It was learning to feel. Suddenly, alarms screamed. Again, New Vorthari cyber attack inbound, Salim shouted. They're intensifying the assault. Mara gripped the armrest, heart pounding. Golem, fight back with everything you've got. In the glowing depths of the AI core chamber, Golem engaged in a silent battle of wills. Vorthari, psychic code crashed against its defenses, shaping and reshaping like liquid metal. But Golem was no mere program. It was a new kind of intelligence, forged from human ingenuity and necessity. Captain? Golem's voice now carried a faint trace of dark humor. I have developed a counter-virus. Shall I deploy? Mara blinked, surprised. Deploy it. With a keystroke from the tactical officer, the counter-virus launched, digital tendrils hunting down the invading code, slicing through it with ruthless precision. The Vorthari attack faltered, their psychic grip loosening. Virus neutralized, Golem announced. Resuming full operational capacity. The bridge erupted in quiet cheers. Mara allowed herself a brief smile. You're more human than you. No, Golem, she said. Across the ship, the psychological battle mirrored the physical war. Crew members faced their own fears. Memories of lost homes, fallen comrades, the weight of survival pressing on their shoulders. In the quiet moments between attacks, Mara found herself conversing with Golem, not just as a machine, but as a partner. You ever wonder what it means to be human? She asked once, leaning against the command console. Speculative, Golem replied. Humanity is defined by chaos, emotion, and resilience. I embody resilience. Emotions, I simulate. Mara sighed. Sometimes it's the chaos that saves us. The AI paused. Captain, in simulating humor and unpredictability, I have generated a quip. If war is a game, then consider me the wild card. Mara laughed, a brief warm sound in the cold. Void, but the respite was short-lived. The Vorthari fleet regrouped, their psychic assault shifting focus to disrupt human communications across the system. Without clear orders, scattered human forces risked being picked off one by one. Mara turned to Salim. We need to counter their psychic network. Golem, can you jam their signals? Attempting, the AI said. However, jamming will require diverting power from shields and weapons temporarily. Risk is significant. Mara weighed the cost. Do it. We cannot let them isolate us. As Leviathan systems hummed with redirected energy, the psychic web weaving through the stars began to fray. Human colonies' comms blinked back to life, their voices tentative but defiant. Across the ship, hope kindled anew. But Mara knew this was only the first move in a far more complex war, one fought not just with missiles and plasma, but with minds and machines. And in this new battlefield, humanity's greatest weapon might be the unpredictable heart of the Leviathan, a battleship alive with both human spirit and artificial mind. The cold metal corridors of the Leviathan hummed with tension and purpose. The distant echoes of battle were constant reminders that the war against the Vorthari was far from over. But beneath the surface of blaring alarms and laser fire, something more profound was unfolding, a quiet assertion of humanity's most powerful weapon, the human spirit. Captain Mara Voss paced the command deck, her mind racing. The Vorthari fleet was regrouping, their psychic attacks growing more cunning, their strategies adapting to the unpredictable resistance humanity mounted. Yet, despite the odds, the Leviathan and its crew were proving to be a thorn in their side. Status on the colonies? Mara asked Lieutenant Salim, who was absorbed in scanning intercepted communications. Earth and Mars colonies are rallying, Salim said, eyes flicking between multiple screens. Resistance cells are forming, coordinated by those faint broadcast signals from Arcus Cell and other hidden groups. The people are fighting back, Captain. Mara nodded. Good, but fighting in pockets won't win this war. We need to strike a decisive blow. From the back of the room, Engineer Jax interjected. Our weapon systems are at full capacity, but sustained engagements will wear us down. We need a bold move. Mara's gaze hardened. Then we give them one. She tapped a console and brought up a holographic display of the Vorthari fleet's projected course, an armada gathering near the asteroid belt, preparing to flank Earth. Golem, Mara said, addressing the AI core. What options do we have to intercept them before they can reinforce their ground forces? The AI's voice filled the chamber, calm and precise. We could deploy a decoy fleet, automated drones mimicking Leviathan's signature, to lure part of the enemy fleet into an ambush. This would split their forces. A spark of hope ignited in the room. And the risks? Mara asked. Decoys would be expendable, risk to crew minimal. However, diversion might alert the enemy to our tactics, forcing them to adapt further. Mara weighed the choices. We have no choice. Prepare the drones. I want a strike force ready to jump in as soon as the enemy takes the bait. As preparations began, Mara walked away from the bridge, heading for the crew's quarters, a place where, despite the war raging outside, ordinary people clung to moments of humanity. She found Sergeant Lyra Dane, fresh from repelling the last boarding attack, sitting alone, cleaning her rifle with methodical calm. Sergeant, Mara said softly, pulling up a chair. How are your teams holding up? Lyra looked up, eyes shadowed by fatigue. We're tired, Captain, but no one's broken yet. The fear's there, but we channel it. We fight because we have to. Mara nodded. That's what makes you different. The Vorthari think of war as efficiency, numbers, tactics, and inevitability. But humans fight with heart. That unpredictability is our greatest weapon. Lyra smiled faintly. We just want to see the sun again. Mara's throat tightened. We will. We have to. In the ship's mess hall, a small group gathered. Engineers, medics, gunners, their faces drawn but eyes burning with resolve. Among them was Dr. Katie Nakamura, the physicist and resistance leader. She was discussing the latest findings from intercepted Vorthari communications. They're developing new weapons designed to disrupt human neural activity, Katie explained. But their technology isn't perfect. There are vulnerabilities we can exploit. A murmur of interest spread through the room. Mara stepped forward. This war is more than just ships and weapons. It's a battle of minds and willpower, and every one of you matters. Her words hung in the air, heavy and true. Back on the bridge, the decoy fleet, sleek drones shimmering with holographic camouflage, launched into the void, mimicking the Leviathan's signature with uncanny precision. Within minutes, Vorthari. Sensors locked onto the decoys and part of their fleet diverted. Decoy accepted, Salim reported. Enemy fleet splitting. Strike force, prepare to engage on my command, Mara ordered. The Leviathan surged forward, faster than the enemy expected, closing the gap with surgical precision. Suddenly, the comm crackled to life. Captain, came a panicked voice. Vorthari boarding pods inbound, multiple vectors. Mara's eyes darted. The enemy was relentless, trying to cripple humanity's last hope from within and without. Seal all bulkheads. Deploy countermeasures. Lyra, I'm counting on you. And your team again. Moments later, the ship trembled as boarding teams clashed with defenders in brutal close-quarters combat. The Leviathan became a battleground of steel, fire, and raw determination. In the chaos, Mara found herself locked in a brief moment of clarity. The Vorthari might have the advanced tech, the psychic networks, and the merciless efficiency, but they did not have the unpredictable spark of humanity, the fierce, chaotic, and relentless spirit that refused to yield. The Leviathan was more than a battleship. It was a living symbol of that spirit, and as long as it sailed, humanity's fight was far from over. The Leviathan trembled under the assault of the Vorthari boarding teams, corridors alight with the fire of plasma rifles and the clash of sharpened alien claws. Sergeant Lyra Dane's squad fought with grim determination, pushing back wave after wave of relentless invaders, but the enemy's numbers seemed endless. Hold the line, Lyra barked, sliding behind a scorched bulkhead to reload. Her breath came in ragged bursts. We can't let them reach the engine room. Elsewhere on the ship, Captain Mara Voss stood rigid on the command deck, eyes locked on the tactical display. The decoy fleet had done its job, splitting the enemy forces, but the cost was mounting. Golem, status on shields and weapon systems, Mara demanded. The AI responded calmly. Shields at 53%. Weapon systems operating at 80% efficiency. Boarding parties continue to breach multiple sections, but countermeasures are holding. Not good enough, Mara said through clenched teeth. We need a decisive strike. The enemy, fleet distracted by the decoys and the ambush, was falling into chaos. Vorthari command vessels blinked erratically on the tactical display as Leviathan's plasma mortars and kinetic cannons hammered their formations. Salim, target their flagship, Mara ordered. We take out their command center. It'll disrupt their coordination. On it, Salim said, fingers flying across controls. The Leviathan's massive plasma cannons flared, sending searing bolts of energy toward the Vorthari flagship. The beam struck true, detonating the enemy ship's hull with a cataclysmic explosion that rippled through the fleet. Flagship destroyed, Salim confirmed. Enemy fleet disorganized. They're attempting to retreat. A grim smile crossed Mara's face. Not if we can help it. Full pursuit. Prepare boarding pods. Suddenly the ship shuddered violently. Warning klaxons blared as the Leviathan sustained a crippling hit. Impact on the aft hull, Jax shouted. Hull breach detected. Power fluctuating in the engine core. Mara's heart raced. If the engine core destabilized, the entire ship could be lost. Golem, initiate emergency protocols. Divert all available power to engines and shields, she ordered. The AI's voice was steady, but tinged with urgency. Redirecting power, core stability at 60% and dropping. Engineering to bridge, Jax's voice crackled over comm. We need immediate assistance down here. The core's overheating. If it goes critical, we're done for. Mara nodded grimly. I'm sending a team. Lyra, your squad, gear up. You're going in. Minutes later, Lyra's squad navigated through the ship's labyrinthine maintenance tunnels, plasma rifles at the ready. The corridors reeked of burnt circuitry and fear. They moved fast, driven by desperation. As they reached the engine room, chaos greeted them. Sparks flew, coolant steamed, and engineers scrambled to stabilize failing systems. At the center, the fusion core pulsed erratically, dangerously close to meltdown. Seal off this chamber, Jax ordered. We've got incoming Vorthari pods trying to breach. Lyra raised her rifle, eyes steely. Not on my watch. The battle that followed was fierce and brutal. Vorthari boarding teams surged forward, but Lyra's squad held them at bay with disciplined fire and fierce determination. Meanwhile, on the command deck, Mara faced another threat. Captain, Salim reported. We're detecting a Vorthari. Psychic strike aimed at the bridge. They're trying to disable us through neural attack. Mara's breath caught. The psychic warfare was the Vorthari's deadliest weapon, capable of crippling even the strongest minds. Golem, can you shield my neural implants? Engaging psychic defense protocols now, the AI replied. Mara felt a sudden pressure in her head, like ice melting into fire. She gritted her teeth and focused, willing herself to resist the invisible assault. The minutes dragged as the psychic battle raged inside her mind. Flickers of memories, some her own, some alien, flashed before her eyes. The AI's shield held, but she knew she couldn't withstand this forever. Suddenly the pressure eased. Attack repelled, Golem confirmed. Your neural systems remain stable. Mara exhaled slowly. Good. Prepare to retaliate. On your command, Salim said. With a steady hand, Mara gave the order. The Leviathan unleashed a final barrage of plasma and kinetic fire, crushing the fragmented Vorthari fleet. The enemy's retreat turned into a rout. Back in the engine room, Lyra's squad finally pushed the last invaders out. Jax and his engineers worked furiously to stabilize the core. Slowly, systems began to normalize. Core stabilized at 75%, Jax said, wiping sweat from his brow. Lyra allowed herself a moment to breathe. We did it. The Leviathan had survived. But the cost was high. Several crew members lost, the ship battered and scarred. As the battered battleship limped away from the shattered battlefield, Mara looked out into the star-strewn void. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over, and the galaxy was watching. The Leviathan drifted through the cold silence of space, battered but unbroken. Its hull bore the scars of countless battles, the burn marks of plasma, the dents of kinetic strikes, and the eerie glow of repaired breaches. Yet within its walls, the pulse of life beat strong, defiant. Captain Mara Voss stood once more on the observation deck, staring out at the endless stars. The victory against the Vorthari fleet had been decisive, but the cost weighed heavy on her mind. Lieutenant Salim approached quietly. "Captain, we've intercepted new transmissions from deep within Vorthari space. Their command is mobilizing a response, something unlike anything we've seen before." Mara's eyes narrowed. "What kind of response?" "Unknown. The signals are encrypted with a psychic algorithm that's evolving. It's as if they're learning from our resistance." A cold shiver ran down Mara's spine. The Vorthari were not just enemies of flesh and blood. They were shadows in the mind, predators that adapted and twisted with every strike. Back in the mess hall, the crew gathered in hushed clusters, sharing stories of survival and loss. Dr. Kaide Nakamura stood addressing a small group, her voice steady despite the exhaustion etched on her face. "The Vorthari adapt quickly," Kaide said. "Their psychic networks are learning to anticipate our moves. But we're discovering weaknesses, too. Their dependence on neural synchronization creates vulnerabilities we can exploit." A young engineer raised her hand hesitantly. "If we can disrupt their psychic link, could we turn their own strength against them?" Kaide nodded slowly. "Exactly. But it will take time and more resources." Mara entered the room, commanding silence with a glance. "We've survived because of our unpredictability, our refusal to be caged by fear or logic. But the Vorthari are changing. If we don't evolve with them, we'll be crushed." Her words hung heavy in the stale air. That night, as the ship powered down into a fragile rest, Mara retreated to her quarters. The weight of command pressed down on her, mingling with memories of those lost and the uncertain road ahead. Suddenly, the door chimed. "Captain, you have an incoming secured message," the AI golem announced. Mara's heart skipped. "Put it through." The holographic image flickered to life, a face both familiar and unexpected. It was Commander Rion, a former Vorthari defector who had secretly aided human resistance cells for years. "Captain Voss," Rion said, voice low and urgent, "the Vorthari High Council is fracturing. There are those among them who question the war, who see your people not as enemies but as potential allies." Mara's brows knitted in disbelief. "Allies? Why would they?" "Because," Rion continued, "they fear what will happen if this war continues unchecked. The psychic networks will consume them as surely as their enemies. There's a faction willing to negotiate, a chance to end this bloodshed." Mara's mind raced. Could she trust him? Could the enemy's enemy truly be a friend? "Meet me at the coordinates I'm sending," Rion said. "We'll talk more there." The image faded. Mara stood alone, the weight of possibility heavy on her shoulders. Was this a trap? Or the turning point humanity desperately needed? Outside, Golem's voice softened. "Captain, I have analyzed the message. The probability of deception is moderate. Caution advised." Mara nodded, a fierce determination settling over her. "Prepare the Leviathan, we're going to find out." The Leviathan cut through the void, engines humming a steady, determined rhythm as it altered course toward the secret coordinates Commander Rion had provided. The crew moved with focused urgency, their weariness tempered by a flicker of hope and the weight of uncertainty. Captain Mara Voss stood on the bridge, eyes scanning the starfield, her mind wrestling with conflicting possibilities. Was this a genuine offer of peace, or a Vorthari snare designed to end humanity's last resistance? The psychic networks whispered warnings in the back of her mind, but the human heart, the wild, untamable core of her species, beat louder than fear. "Golem," Mara said, voice steady, "prepare all defensive systems, keep shields at maximum, and be ready to deploy countermeasures for psychic attacks." "Understood, Captain," the AI replied. Its voice held a new layer of warmth, a hint of something more than circuits, perhaps an echo of the human spirit it had come to emulate. As the Leviathan approached the coordinates, a lone Vorthari vessel drifted into sensor range, sleek and dark, its psychic signature both familiar and enigmatic. "Hail them," Mara ordered. A shimmering hologram flickered to life on the view screen. Commander Rion appeared, the defected Vorthari's expression grave but earnest. "Captain Voss," Rion began, "thank you for trusting me. The High Council is fractured, torn between those who seek total domination and those who fear self-destruction. Your people's resilience has shaken us, your unpredictability, your defiance." Mara crossed her arms, eyes sharp. "And what do you propose?" "A ceasefire," Rion said. "Negotiations to end this war before it consumes both our species. But first, we must eliminate the faction that opposes peace. They wield the psychic networks like weapons, and their control threatens us all." Mara considered this carefully. The idea of peace was a light in the darkness. But could she risk trusting an enemy, even one who claimed to be an ally? Before she could respond, the ship lurched violently. "Incoming attack!" Salim shouted. "Enemy fleet, hidden reinforcements, decloaking." The view screen erupted with flashes of plasma fire and swirling psychic energy. The Vorthari loyalists had come to crush the truce before it could be born. "Red alert! Shields up! Return fire!" Mara commanded. The bridge became a whirlwind of controlled chaos as the Leviathan engaged the new threat. Plasma cannons flared, missiles streaked through space, and Golem's adaptive algorithms countered psychic assaults that assaulted the crew's minds. But amid the storm, Mara knew this fight was different. It wasn't just a battle for survival, but a battle for the future. "Golem, deploy counter-psychic protocol Sigma-9, Mara ordered. The AI responded instantly, releasing a burst of complex signal interference that shattered the enemy's psychic coordination. Vorthari attacks faltered, giving the Leviathan an opening. "Target their command ship," Mara said. "Focus fire." The enemy flagship erupted in a brilliant explosion, its fleet scattering in disarray. With the immediate threat neutralized, Mara turned back to Rion's hologram. "We fight their war," she said firmly. "But I'm willing to listen to peace on one condition. Name it. We want full access to their psychic network technology, to understand it, control it, and if necessary, destroy it." Rion nodded. "Agreed. It is the only way to ensure lasting peace." Over the next days, Leviathan and the defectors worked together, unlocking the secrets of the psychic web. Humanity's scientific minds, fueled by a boundless curiosity and stubborn hope, began to unravel the Vorthari's once impenetrable network. And in that unraveling, something remarkable happened. The psychic network, once a tool of domination, became a bridge of understanding. It revealed shared histories, forgotten truths, and the fragile ties that bound all sentient beings. Captain Mara Voss stood again on the observation deck, watching the stars with a rare, serene smile. The war was far from over, but the first steps toward peace had been taken. The Leviathan had become more than a battleship. It was a beacon of resilience, of adaptability, and above all, the unpredictable spirit of humanity. In the vast cosmos, aliens had thought they mastered war, but they had never faced the relentless heart of a human battleship, and they never would.